Let's talk about the anti-communist book from 1958 that still shapes the American conservative movement today, and how it originated as a Mormon project, drew from Mormon doctrine, and was enabled by Mormon leadership. But before I get to that, I want to start with this clip that might be a surprise to those of you, but it shows its lasting influence. Here's a clip from the Charlie Kirk funeral last September. The speaker is Ben Carson, the famous surgeon, culture warrior, and a candidate for the GOP presidential nomination in 2016. And he cites who he argues was a forerunner to Charlie Kirk. Go ahead and watch.
Now, for many decades, there have been people who are trying to fundamentally change who we are. And there was a man by the name of Cleon Skousen who wrote a book called The Naked Communist in the 50s. And he exposed the things that were being done by the Marxists to gain control of our country. Such things as gaining control of the public education system and the teacher unions so that you could infiltrate and indoctrinate our young people.
Yeah, you heard him right. Ben Carson cited Cleon Skousen and his 1958 work, The Naked Communist, as a crucial text that shaped the American conservatism movement and was Charlie Kirk before Charlie Kirk, as he would put it. The book, by the way, then became an Amazon bestseller over the weekend. Just one of many times that book has been resurrected in American culture and has been a touchstone for American politics. Now, the book has had a major lasting impact, even though many who are outside of that sphere might not recognize it. But even those who really see the book as crucial might overlook its Mormon origins. Now, this topic was actually the point of emphasis in my recent presidential address of the Mormon History Association in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. Now, that article that address will be published as an article next year in the Journal of Mormon History. I'm also now working on a biography of Cleon Skousen that will be published by Signature Books. But I thought I'd give you a taste of some of the lessons we can learn from it. So in this video, I want to give a little bit of background to Skousen and why he became significant. I'll then talk about the book, The Naked Communist, its origins, its contents, and especially its publication and promotion, and show how it was Mormon to its core, and it would not have become as influential as it was without the help of LDS leaders, which then catapulted Skousen's career to become one of the most influential conservative figures in 20th century America. Cleon Skousen was born in 1913, the year he believed that several of the most important events took place in American history as part of this global cabal to undercut American democracy. His birth was not part of that conspiracy, I should add, and I will cover that conspiracy maybe in a future video. He was raised in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. He received a degree in San Bernardino, and then he traveled to Washington, D.C. to get a job, as well as to get his law degree from George Washington University, where he then worked for J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. And while the FBI is seen as many things, one of the things it was in the mid-20th century was a cultivator of ideas of Christian nationalism, the fusion of religion and politics. That was really highlighted in an excellent recent book by Lerone Martin on J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI, and white Christian nationalism that really shapes how many, including Cleon Skousen, approached gospel and politics. And while he was still a student and a rising the ranks in the FBI, he became a very prominent speaker, a very popular Sunday school author, and eventually self-publishes some of his own books that eventually culminate later on once he moves to LA and then moves to BYU to run the BYU alumni office. He becomes known as a scriptorian. His first major scriptural book, The First 2,000 Years, published by the church in 1953, places him on the map, and is hard to overstate how influential that book of scripture was. But that book of scripture was also entrenched with political ideas that are going to become quite crucial, because he becomes known as an anti-communist firebrand, traveling the nation, giving these speeches. So that in 1953, the same year his First 1,000 Years book hit shelves, the LDS president at the time, David O. McKay, commissioned the BYU president, Ernest L. Wilkinson, to create a committee chaired by Cleon Skousen to write a textbook on communism and the threat it posed to the world. McKay worried that Americans weren't taking the threat seriously enough. Now, this committee does not go very well because Skousen approaches history and theology and politics very different than academics. And so they produce a report, but it falls far short of what McKay envisioned. Skousen was also very disappointed. So even when Skousen left BYU to become the chief of police of Salt Lake City at the recommendation of J. Edgar Hoover, a fascinating topic I'll cover in another video because he ends up being fired. He gets in a fight with the Salt Lake City mayor after he captures the mayor in one of his sting operations. I promise you, it's a fascinating story. But during that time, while he was chief of police, he continued to work on this anti-communist manifesto that ends up being truly significant. By the way, before I go much further, I want to emphasize that if you enjoy this type of historical nerdy content, make sure you are subscribed to my channel. I do deep dives on topics like this one every Monday. I connect the past to the present every Wednesday, talking about politics, media, or movies, and how religion plays a role. And then on Fridays, I pull back the curtains on the historian's craft. I talk to authors of new books, I revisit classics, or I even look at the sources behind common arguments so that you can develop the tools to become a historian as well. And if you want to give back, and I'm so very grateful for the many of you who have given back, you can become a member, where for a nominal fee, you get early access to the videos, you get icons next to your name when you leave comments, and most importantly, you can feel good about supporting public-facing, rigorous scholarship, enabling both me and my wonderful producer, Anthony, to spend the time necessary to put these videos together. I also recommend subscribing to my Kit newsletter, where I send out notices every other week or so with links, announcements, updates, as well as an insight of what's coming next in my various activities. And you can also follow me on my social media platforms, especially Instagram, where I provide supplemental videos and updates and lots of good nerdy stuff. Anyways, that's enough of the boring business and focus on me. Let's get back to Skousen. By late 1957, Skousen has finished his entire massive book on the history and threat and conspiracy of communism. Following the advice of the famous film director Cecil B. DeMille, you probably know him from his famous Ten Commandments movie, he titles it The Naked Communist because he argues it strips down communism to its very core. The text can be very overwhelming. It's filled with block quotes and photographs and maps trying to show how the tentacles of Marx's legacies are seeping into every aspect of the world, including in America. And he makes a lot of conspiratorial connections of various people that demonstrate the breadth that many experts very vehemently dispute, but maybe I'll get into the content of that at another time. But what I was struck in rereading that work this last year, as I started looking at Skousen historical figure, is how much Mormon content is found in this book in subtle ways. Even the way he defines terms like agency or actors like what he calls the homo Marxian, the Marxist man, as someone who is acted upon rather than acted, that's directly taken from the Book of Mormon. And further, when he defines this communist threat, he connects it to what he calls what he defines as a transgenerational schema that goes all the way back to when Cain slew Abel, which reads like the secret combinations from the Book of Mormon, the same type of ideas that he was arguing in his book, The First 2,000 Years, which is why I argue his two 1950s books, The First 2,000 Years on the Origins of the Bible and his Naked Communists, are understood within a broader political theology that have to be understood together. Now, he is able to package these Mormon teachings in ways that many readers who might otherwise see Mormonism as a heresy would buy into it. He defines his definition of Marxism, the Marxist man and the Marxist tradition, he says in sociological terms, but they're truly in theological terms. And that's what's eventually going to make it a bestseller. However, At first, he has struggled finding a publisher. None of the Eastern presses wanted to publish it because this is in the years following the McCarthy hearings, and the anti-communism is exposed as, zeal without knowledge, as some might call it. And then even the BYU press doesn't agree to publish it, much to Skousen's disappointment, and the church even does not agree to publish it. So Skousen for a moment thought that, oh no, my big classic work isn't even going to see the light of day. But that's when the church leadership comes in and saves him. Because according to Skousen, when he writes about the origins of the project just a few years later, it is at this moment, when he feared that the work was not ever going to see the light of day, that he met with David O. McKay, again the LDS prophet, the man who first commissioned the project in the first place. And McKay told Skousen that if you take the financial risk and publish it yourself, I will make sure that you make the money back. And so Skousen takes the prophet at his word. He takes out a second mortgage on his home, enough money to publish 5,000 copies, which he does under his new imprint, Ensign Press. By the way, it is published by none other than Thomas S. Monson, who is not an apostle at the time, but had his own press in Salt Lake City. And once it was published in early 1958, he sends copies to church leaders and government officials. He believes he's made this big contributions, and he receives lots of letters of support. Here, for instance, are letters he received from David O. McKay, of course, the president who made it possible, as well as J. Reuben Clark, one of the most prominent LDS influences in the 20th century, as well as secular leaders. Here's a letter from Dwight D. Eisenhower praising him for it, and here's a letter from none other than J. Edgar Hoover, who really provided the foundation on which Skousen was building in that work. But it appeared that the book was not going to get a wide reach, and so Skousen consoled himself in his diary saying, well, at least if I influence those people at the top, maybe the ideas will trickle down to the general public. It's just not going to be a bestseller. But then the next year, David O. McKay kept his word. Remember, he promised Skousen that if you took on the financial risk, I will make sure that you earn it back. And in 1959, at General Conference, David McKay stood up before the international body, held up a copy of Skousen's Naked Communist, said communism is the biggest threat of our time, and Police Chief Cleon Skousen has outlined why and what we can do in this book. I encourage members to get a copy. And from that point on, Skousen had a long time fulfilling the demand. Many Latter-day Saints got copies. I've been talking to people after giving my address at MHA a couple of weeks ago who said, my parents had copies on their shelves because the prophet told them to buy a copy. And that's what enabled the book to remain in print. And then that same year, the John Birch Society is founded a rabid anti-communist organization. They and other right-wing groups start promoting Skousen's Naked Communist, and within 3 years, nearly 2 million copies of the book is sold. It has remained in print ever since and remains a very crucial touchstone for a certain segment of anti-Marxist culture warriors in America, as seen by Ben Carson at the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. So you might have heard of Cleon Skousen before. You might have heard about his Naked Communist book. But I hope this video showed how Mormon that book was, despite being embraced by a non-Mormon audience. It was born out of a prophetic assignment when church leadership asked Skousen to write it. It drew from prophetic texts and presenting Mormon doctrine, albeit in a subtly camouflaged way. And it was enabled by prophetic support when David O. McKay urged Latter-day Saints to buy it. That publication then launched Skousen's career. He would spend the next decade as basically a public celebrity, giving around 300 lectures a year across the globe, all made possible by that book. And he would eventually have several more bestsellers: The Naked Capitalist, The 5,000-Year Leap, The Miracle of America, that end up shaping the American right. I argue that Cleon Skousen is one of the most influential architects of white Christian nationalism in America, and it was all made possible by this book. But Skousen never would have become what he became Nor would he shape modern conservatism the way he did without the support of the church and David O. McKay's intervention. I think this is just a fascinating insight that comes from archival digging and learning what happened, which is why I love research. In fact, right now, the day I am recording this video, I am going to go off to the Harold B. Lee Library on BYU campus and do more research in Skousen's collections. This archival digging is the best part of the historian's job because it allows us to learn these insights that might otherwise get overlooked. A reminder that history has never been more relevant than it is today because it shows how things developed in particular ways that shape the world we now live in, and we should not just take for granted.